So the MCU is back with its latest entry, Captain America Brave New World, and alongside its release, it gets the lowest cinema score ever for an MCU film. But is it actually that bad?
I've got good news and bad news. The good news is we'll be landing immediately. The bad news is we're crash landing.
As we can see here, this is confirmation that Captain America 4 has the lowest cinema score ever for an MCU film, and that's not the record that Marvel wanted in its opening weekend, absolutely not. And if we look at some of the other MCU films on this list here and see what their scores were, we see that the Avengers, Black Panther and Endgame got an A+, a lot of films got an A, a lot of films got an A-, 6 films got a B+, and on its own, with a B-, we have Captain America Brave New World. Now, I'd say that the Eternals and Quantumania and the Marvels are all worse than this film, so I wouldn't say this is a fair rating system in terms of Captain America Brave New World being the worst film in the MCU, but it does mean that people are not enjoying the MCU at the moment. Like, what's going on? Like, to have such a negative reaction in its opening weekend. And I think even from my own experience, I saw people at the end of the film say, why did I bother? I should have just waited until Disney+. The end credit scene didn't fill people with much joy either, saying that was one of the worst things I had to sit through and wait for. So people are leaving the cinema not happy at all. However, considering this bad cinema score, it has actually opened to $100 million in the US and $192 million globally, which for Marvel they are pretty pleased with because that is higher than expected. It's now whether it can avoid that second week plummet that we've seen with some films in the MCU. And if we go down here to this part of the article where it says the film has actually scored the 4th biggest President's Day 4-day launch behind Black Panther, Deadpool, and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And it's interesting on that final film because that was the most recent of those 3. With that in mind, if we go back to when Ant-Man 3 was released, we can see that it suffered a second weekend box office collapse as it went down 69% from the opening weekend. Which was absolutely terrible for the film, and it was one of the few films not to break even when it comes to the MCU, as it had a budget of around $350 million, and it made around $470 million in terms of its box office, which was not enough to break even. Now, in terms of Captain America 4, that budget is much less than this film. It's only around $180 million, so if it does make the same sort of box office, it will break even and make some money, which is what Marvel wants to do. But I think this is a good film to compare Captain America 4 with because it does share similar scores from critics and fans alike. Like here we can see 46%, 81% for the audience, and 51% for critics, 80% for audience. So very similar there, very similar in terms of cinema scores as well. So I think if Captain America can reach that and does break even just about, then that will be fine for Marvel as its first step into hopefully for them a new era. Now, to answer the question, is the film any good? I think, as I said earlier, it is better than those low-end MCU films like the Marvels and the Eternals and Quantumania, but I don't think it gets much higher than that. I think the overall feeling after watching the film was meh. Like, it was a real meh kind of experience because the film didn't seem to have its direction sorted, and I think a lot of that comes down to the well-known production issues it suffered. I think it went through quite a few changes. I think it wanted to go to more of a similar tone to Winter Soldier, but didn't have the finesse attached to it for it to become a success like that film. And I think showing off the Red Hulk in its promotional campaign was probably a smart move to get people get bums in seats, but that was a big twist in the movie, the big final thing to happen in the film. So if you didn't know that, that'd been a fantastic reveal. But I understand why they did this because now I can sell all the popcorn buckets with the Red Hulk, and the Red Hulk just being something a bit different, and with Harrison Ford attached to it as well, that is that star power. That was something they had to really get out there for the public to know. With Captain America Brave New World, this has been Anthony Mackie's chance to finally be the leading man, and he said in interviews before that he's cherished this opportunity to finally have the spotlight on him and for people to come and see a movie with him being the leading face. Has it worked though in terms of him being the new Captain America? I'm not so sure. I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier was there to try and help with this process, but I think a lot of people probably didn't watch that show, and even with the show, I don't think it really did a great job at doing that. I think there is still that shadow of Steve Rogers, and the film does address it as well. He addresses it within the movie, but it's just there. I mean, as well, considering the MCU has had films where they do address this, how you're not the suit and you are the person behind it. Well, this is the same thing here. We're here for Steve Rogers. His story is what was told in that first Captain America, and that's why we grew to love that character. And so just to have Falcon now become Captain America, like, I liked Falcon, I liked Sam, like I liked him as that character alongside Steve or alongside any of the Avengers, but I liked him as Falcon. Him as Captain America is something different, and him not being a supporting actor is different. And I don't think he was able to really grasp the film, and I don't think it's all his fault, but I do think he just doesn't have that gravitas to really own the room, if you know what I mean. Whereas I think Chris Evans was able to do that as Captain America. Like, for example, if Rhodey took on the reins of Iron Man, that'd also be difficult to accept, because I'm so used to Rhodey being War Machine, and that's being an integral part of his whole life, that for him just to go into Iron Man's shoes, just to get that new status and just to get in there because it's vacant, would just feel a bit odd, because Iron Man is so Tony Stark. It's all part of his journey of his life. And the same here with Captain America. Steve Rogers, being Captain America during that wartime was such a huge thing for him. And now it's just vacant. And I know he gave the shield to Sam, but it still doesn't feel like it's right. I'd rather just see Sam as Falcon, because he built up that character of Falcon so well. But Falcon doesn't sell tickets, and Falcon also probably doesn't get the respect that Captain America does in the story. So I can understand that. In the film, though, we do have a new Falcon who we jump into the film not really seeing how they meet. It's just like they have a great bond. And I do kind of wish we got more with these two, because I think that they worked okay together. But I don't really know much about this new guy. Like with Captain America Winter Soldier, we see Steve and Sam on those runs and that initial connection build between the two of them. Whereas here, it's like we have to sort of just jump in there, but the film has so much going on. It never has time to really let this breathe and make you feel like that these two as this double act going into these missions together. Now, a benefit of having watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier is that you'd already have met Isaiah Bradley, who is a key character in the narrative, but they do go really down the Winter Soldier line with this character, but they just don't do it in the same way, because with Winter Soldier, they had the idea, they had the focus of what they wanted to tell with that film. This one, it feels like in the second half of production, Kevin Feige came in the room saying, look, forget all the multiverse stuff, let's get more to a grounded Marvel film like we used to have in those early phases, and just have something a bit more simple in that way. But with that, he's added in all these different characters, added in references and a connection to the Incredible Hulk film. We've got Thunderbolt Ross, played by Harrison Ford in the movie. We've got the Red Hulk. We've got all these little bits sort of left over. We even got a scene involving the Celestial finally from the Eternals. So there's lots of things, sort of just loose ends to try and just throw it into this one film. And when you have all these different things, all these different plates being spun, it's like some of them are going to fall down, and they do. But the film's always hoping that you just hold out until we get to that red plate with the Red Hulk, because that's what you're here for, right? That, see the Red Hulk, just wait, please, just wait.
Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. Here it comes. Almost there.
As we've seen with many comic book films in the past, they do like to get some great talent on board, but they then waste them in an undeveloped role, and that's the same what we've got here with Giancarlo Esposito as Sidewinder of the Serpent Society, because he sort of pops up now and again just to remind you he's in the film, but he's not woven into the plot well at all. It feels like a bit of a last minute addition, and yeah, he's a great actor, but it just feels like you're only here just to sell some tickets again because you are a big name. People know you as Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, and they might try and drop in because he might do something really cool like he did in that show, or do something cool like he's done in The Mandalorian maybe, I don't know. But yeah, it just feels like another name just to add to the cast list, really. To go back to the Winter Soldier comparisons again, we do also have a Black Widow character in this film, and she is a character where when we first meet her, I'm like, wow, she's quite powerful. Surely we're going to find out some more about her powers, but no, not really. She just sort of has a scene where she kicks ass, and that's it. It's like, oh wow, she can do that. But as an actual character and person, she's quite annoying. Like, there's quite a few scenes where, like, can you not? Why are you here? Like, it feels like she really wants to involve herself all the time. And, like, surely there must be something else at play here. Is there something else to this character? But by the end of the film, you're like, no, nothing happened. So that's just how she is, I guess. It's like, oh, great. Well, yeah, she is no Natasha. Let's just say that. I've briefly talked about the Red Hulk, but I've yet to really speak about Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross. But I thought he was fine. I thought he wasn't awful. He wasn't great, but he put in a decent enough performance. He does grumble through a few lines, which you have to listen closely to. But I thought he got into the emotion of the character well, and his transformation scene, into the Red Hulk was also well done. That action scene was, it had its fun moments, but there were a few dodgy effects used there, which did take you out of it a bit. And it was actually surprising, but that was worse, actually, than the Celestial scene, which we have a bit earlier in the film. But yeah, I think Harrison Ford was a good addition. He didn't phone it in, which some people might have thought he would do at this stage of his career, but yeah, he was fine. One of the highlights from the story here was seeing this tussle between these powerful nations for a new resource. This resource is definitely one of those takeaways from the film to get you intrigued about the future of the MCU, but there's not much else I could take from the movie. I couldn't fully get invested into the story either because I just didn't really feel the stakes again. I don't know if that's still a multiverse issue or not, but we have some of these action scenes taking place, and I can sit there and admire them for what they are, but I'm never fully there with the characters, actually caring if this all goes to plan or not. And that's an issue, and I hope that can finally get resolved at some point, maybe in the later Avengers films when we finally get into the depths of this multiverse saga, of the story they want to tell. But I was hoping that this film would actually be the first film to really get us on that road to those Avengers films. I'm now assuming that will probably maybe take place in Fantastic Four, where we get maybe a tease of Doctor Doom with Robert Downey Jr. But I thought this might be the one. I mean, there are a few lines dropped here to sort of showcase that the Avengers are in the minds of the story at this moment in time. But I was just hoping there'll be more things laid out now to get people back on board, because I think that's another thing. People just don't know. We don't know where we are right now. There's so many characters just left over here, some over there. All these end credit scenes of new characters introduced, like Star Fox and whoever else. It's like, well, they're there, they're here. No, there's no real sections anymore. In the past we had the world people on Earth, and we had people in space and all that. But now it's like there's people in space, there's people here, there's people in different universes, different multiverse. There's people all over the place. So it needs things to sort of come together. And I thought this might have been the film to help do a bit of that. But instead it feels like the film which is sort of just, like I said earlier, getting those loose ends and just trying to sort out a few of those. And a lot, including with the Incredible Hulk film, which is quite a surprise really, because it's one of those films where it's sort of been forgotten as part of this whole story, back with Edward Norton as the Hulk. And when it comes to the villain of this film, it was, an interesting reveal, I'll say that. But I wasn't very impressed with the villain. It just didn't feel right. I know it's a bit difficult because it's like they have to get a villain that is connected to Sam in a way, but there isn't one there, is there? So they're going to have to do something. But they could have just done a whole new villain, obviously. They didn't have to get someone from an old film or anything like that. But yeah, I wasn't very impressed with the whole idea with how they're going to get an antagonist on board here, and it just was all so weak. And speaking of weak, that end credit scene was as flat as a pancake. I don't know why they're doing sort of chapter 4 MCU end credit scene here with a sort of vague threat of what's to come to this character. Like, I understand the character will need to understand about that, but at the same time, this is an end credit scene. This is for the audience watching. So give us something better. Give us something that is worthy of a later chapter of the MCU, not just the usual standard, ooh, something's coming, ooh. Well, actually give us something a bit now. Like, we're supposed to be, like I said, we're supposed to be on the road to 2 Avengers movies that are coming out soon. There was also a cameo in the film which had no real reaction from my audience at all. It's just one conversation really, but it's from a character where you thought, hold on, if you're here knowing the issue, why are you not getting involved? Like, you'd be quite helpful in this situation. But yeah, they turned up and they left.
I made it into the episode. Pay me, bitches.
So with Captain America Brave New World, it's not the worst MCU film, and it's nowhere near as bad as some of those Sonyverse films recently, but it's definitely in the bottom third when it comes to the overall MCU films list. It's not really worth a rewatch, it's a bit too underwhelming for that. And when it comes to the overarching story of the MCU, it hasn't really moved forward enough with this film to warrant you to see it at the cinema ASAP. So there's no real urgency there. So I'm sure a lot of people will think, okay, I'll just watch it on Disney Plus. So we'll see how many people actually do that when we come to the box office and see if it does have a big drop or not in that second week. By the time you're watching this, you might already see that. So yeah, it'd be very interesting to see how it performs. But let me know your thoughts on the movie. Did you enjoy it? Was it better than you expected? Was it worse than you expected? So yeah, put all those comments down below. And if you want to watch another video on screen, I have a couple of my recent reviews.